One of the interesting features, or one would actually say it's not a feature, it's a bug, as some programmers say, or the other way around. Um, One of the interesting qualities of the YouTube and other similar sites is that it suggests people the videos that um, apparently already fit into what they were watching before. So, for instance, a Republican person is much more likely to be suggested videos that are Republican than a Democrat, and vice versa. So, one of the side effects of this is obviously that people now rarely get um, divergent opinions or are able to make any kind of reasonable judgment, because what they're getting is often supports what they already believe in and what they want to see and watch. And it's well known that the way the propaganda works is pretty much anything can be proven and disproven. Just to give one example offhand, I mean, this is an obvious example, but there's so many other examples of this. Let's say I want to promote the idea that the terrible injustice was done to Germany during World War II. So all I have to do is quote all the losses, and especially if I show pictures and videos of kids being killed, show the numbers of Germans that were killed, German civilians, that many of them who maybe never even voted for Hitler and had absolutely nothing to do with the crimes of Nazi Germany, and even compare the numbers of, let's say, how many Americans were killed during the war versus how many Germans. Especially if you take the civilians, there's hardly any American civilians that were killed during the war. Germany didn't bombard New York, but America did bombard Berlin and Dresden and many other places. So my point is that obviously if one quotes this kind of thing without any background, it's very easy to convince somebody that Germany was the poor victim of horrible crimes done to it by Americans, British, Russians, etc. Now, today, there is just so much misinformation and so much biased media, biased coverage, whether this is the American election, each side with its own propaganda, whether it's even things that are supposed to be sort of scientific, when discussions about, let's say, global warming, almost everybody already made up their mind and they just see things a certain way. The reason I started saying all this is that I recently made a video on, basically, originally I made a video on the Haftorah, the reading from the prophet that we read during the holiday of Sukkot. And because of certain words in that video, especially the title that had to do with the war of Gog and Magog, apparently it got a lot of attraction, a lot of interest from Christians, because Christians also talk about this topic a lot. So I had a lot of replies from Christians. So then I made a video where I'm, by the way, one of those types of people who just wants to live in peace. And I think this is true about the vast majority of Jewish people. We don't want to change anybody. We just want to be left alone. We're live and let live kind of people to a large extent. And we definitely do not want to convert the rest of the world to Judaism, as I mentioned on that video. But the various reactions, first of all, that video became incredibly popular compared to most of my videos. Interestingly, that the videos that I make, and I make my videos for the Jewish people, they get maybe 20 clicks, and of course most of the people who click on it doesn't mean they actually finish watching. A lot of them probably watch for a couple of minutes or maybe even for a couple of seconds and stop. So they hardly get anybody who actually finishes. Maybe there's 2 or 3 people per video that actually listen to what I have to say, which is okay. I'm not trying to be popular. I'm not trying to change the world. If I made a short, what's called Dvar Torah, a short Torah word, something that explains some idea, and a few people actually watched it and learned something, that's good enough for me. I was never very good at gathering crowds, if you could call it. I remember I actually went to Princeton University, surprisingly enough. I don't look like a kind of person who went to Princeton University, but I wasn't born in a religious family. I was born in the Soviet Union, and I went to Princeton University. And I remember at the end of my years in Princeton, I actually finished it in 3 years. I was quite good at math at that time. And in my last year, I decided I'm going to give a lecture. And I wanted to gather people and say a few things. I was interested in telling them there's a lot of non-religious Jews in Princeton. I want to tell them certain things. And guess what? Nobody showed up. If like say 2 people showed up, I'd be at least okay. There's 2 people to talk to. There was nobody who showed up. 0. So I'm just trying to say that I guess if 2 people watch my videos that are made for the Jewish people on some topic in Torah, and they actually finished watching, that's already an accomplishment. It's more than I was able to get in Princeton, let's say. But what happened with that video where I was discussing the Jewish position on other religions, and specifically on Christianity, and why we remain as Jews, that video gathered a lot more people, and of course that video wasn't made for the Jews. This was the first video that I specifically made for non-Jews on my channel, and there it was an interesting result that a lot of people who made comments were quite supportive. They're like me, people who are live and let live. But there were also a lot of comments of people who hate us. And they quote all kinds of things. The type of propaganda that I just mentioned in the beginning of this video. This is a very similar idea that you could take something, for instance, somebody mentioned that there are some Jews who spit at Christians. Okay, maybe there are. There are millions of Jews in the world. I don't know. I've never seen such a thing. I was spit a number of times people spit on me. And presumably these people were Christians. I don't know. I didn't check their religion, but I have had cases, and my daughter had the case recently that somebody just spit on her. So this happens, and I'm assuming that in a lot of cases it's because they see we're Jewish. In some cases, maybe not. Maybe there are other reasons why they do it. But I'm not going to deny that maybe there are some cases where some Jews spit on some Christian for whatever reason. First of all, we don't know the whole story, how these videos get recorded and what was before. A lot of times you see these videos where they show, for instance, that let's say somebody on the left would show somebody in America, let's say a more conservative person, somebody on the right in a certain way, but the whole video is not shown and you don't really know what was before. We had this recently. There were a few highly publicized cases like that when the leftist media showed a certain video without showing the whole thing. But let's say even there was a completely unprovoked, or even if it's provoked, it's not really the right thing to do, spitting on by a Jew on a Christian. Maybe there is such a thing. Like I said, I've never seen such a thing, but I agree that it's possible. And even if it's completely unprovoked, or if it is provoked, whatever the case may be, what does it tell about the millions of Jews? Absolutely nothing. Just like I'm not mentioning how many times I was spit at. Do I assume that all Christians are going to spit on me? Of course not, but there are some. So then there's somebody else who writes something from the Talmud he found. Obviously, he doesn't read the Talmud. The Talmud is humongous, by the way. There's few Orthodox Jews that finish the entire Talmud. It's pretty hard. It takes many years. It's a huge, very complex work. And there's all kinds of things in the Talmud. So he says that it says something bad about Jesus and his mother. Okay, first of all, this is not the standard edition of the Talmud. The vast majority of Jews who learn the Talmud are never going to see this all together. And like I said, you'd have to finish the entire Talmud to see this. But of course, some anti-Semite found it and decided to quote it. So the point of the matter is that one should know that there is actually a dispute of Rishonim, early commentators, whether Yeshu mentioned in the Talmud has anything to do with the Jesus that Christians believe in. Some people say there were 2 different people with the same name, so it's a big question altogether what it's talking about. Secondly, like I said, in most editions of the Talmud, this is not even found. Maybe censorship removed it, who knows what happened there. But it's not like Jews are busy with Christianity or beginning of Christianity every day. We're not. We just live by, Judaism is much older than Christianity. We're not trying to deal with it at all. The Talmud does not talk much about the founder of Christianity, even in those editions where there are a couple of stories like that. But we're going to start quoting what, let's say, Christians said about Jews, including many important Christian leaders, then there will be a huge collection of these types of things. So the question really comes down to, what do we want for our future? What do we want for ourselves, for our kids? Do we want to hate everybody, or do we want to live in love? The vast majority of Jewish people want to live and let live. We definitely are not interested in fighting with the Christians, in convincing anybody. We just want to be left alone. So if the other side will be just as kind to us as we are, and by the way, there are so many things to quote from the Talmud, the positive things that it says about non-Jews in general, and how we treat non-Jews ideally. If we have the money, for instance, we would give charity not just to Jews, but to non-Jews as well, etc. There are so many good things that it says. But no, the anti-Semite will of course quote something specific, some unusual agada, a legend that pertains to some individual. Like I said, it's not even clear that it's actually the founder of Christianity, and the supposed rumors about his birth. By the way, you'd be surprised, Catholic Church today admits to a possibility. This is in a letter written by the Pope, or not the Pope personally, but a certain person from high clergy in Catholicism, that they admit that it's possible that Jesus was born from a man who was not the husband of Mary. So it's not just the Jews who make this claim, it's the Catholics who at least admit that it's a possibility, and that the early Christians would be, it would be hard for them to accept this kind of thing. It's difficult to imagine that the founder of their religion was born out of such relationship, and that's why the whole story of virgin birth came out. By the way, in Judaism, nobody ever, there's never a birth of virgins. Virgins never give birth in Judaism. This is true in Greek and Roman myths, but this is never true in Judaism. And the word Alma, which they quote from Yeshayahu, from Isaiah 7th chapter, 14th verse, it means just a young woman, not virgin. There's no virgin birth anywhere in our Bible. First of all, it would be never be a sign of anything, because how would you verify a woman is a virgin? Even today, it's not a simple matter. You have to be a gynecologist to know if a woman is a virgin. So how would it ever be a sign? But Yeshayahu is talking about his times, and that's how the Christians today, a lot of the Christian scholars admit that this verse has nothing to do neither with the times of Jesus nor with the virgin birth. There is a specific word in the Torah for virgins. It's called Bitulah, or Ashkenazim pronounce it as Bisula. Alma means a young woman, and the sign had to do with the times of Ahaz, a certain king, and I'm not going to go into the details. You could find on the internet a lot already. This has been a very old polemics. My point of the matter is that this particular statement is made by Catholic Church, no less, not just the Talmud. So I'm saying that even if we assume that it is the correct version, the correct Girsai in the Talmud, as I said, in most editions we don't even have it. In my edition of the Talmud, I have at home the entire Talmud, and I learned it a few times, but most Jews, as I said, even Orthodox Jews, not necessarily going to finish the entire Talmud. It's not an easy work, and it takes years to finish it. But even if we say that in addition that this story appears, like I said, my edition, there's no such story altogether, but in addition where it appears, and even if we say it's talking about the same Yeshu, Jesus, that the Christians are talking about, then at the very least, even among the Christians are those who admit that it's a possibility that the founder of Christianity was born from some man and Mary, who was betrothed already. So whatever the case may be, this doesn't really change the accomplishment of a specific individual, by the way. Even a person who is born from bad, out of wedlock or whatever, from bad ancestry, and what we call a mamzer, that person can also do great accomplishments. For instance, in the Jewish law, if there are two people who were stolen into captivity, and there's a ransom being demanded, and one of them is a high priest, the most distinguished lineage there is, but he's not he doesn't have knowledge of Torah. The other person, however, is a mamzer, a person born from, let's say, adultery, but he's knowledgeable in Torah. Who do you think we're going to redeem first? If we don't have the money to redeem both, we're going to redeem the mamzer. So the point of the matter is that even if the founder of Christianity was a mamzer, that doesn't really mean that he couldn't have had a good message. The truth of the matter is that in Christian writings there are not really any major messages, at least those attributed to the founder of Christianity by the four Gospels. There's not really much there that the Jewish rabbis didn't say. A lot of the parables and a lot of the things that he said, the Jewish rabbis also said very similar things. He was a student, according to Chazal. If it's talking about the same Yeshu, then he was a student of a certain important rabbi and most likely quoted the types of things that many other rabbis said before and after him. I remember I once read a story, I don't know how authentic it is, but it sounds right. There was this great author in Russia, Leo Tolstoy, Lev Nikolaevich Tolstoy. He was a very famous, one of the most famous, important classical writers in Russian literature. So the story goes that he actually was interested in what the rabbis have to say about the teachings of Jesus, and that he had a rabbi with whom he discussed all those interesting things that he quoted from the so-called New Testament. And the rabbi would find for almost every one of them a Talmudic source, or a Mishnaic source, basically, from a very similar time period. The rabbi said quite similar things. There was one, however, teaching that the rabbis did not say, and that is turning the other cheek. So according to the story, when Leo Tolstoy said to the rabbi about this teaching, the rabbi said, and which Christian follows this teaching? It's not really the kind of teaching that most Christians follow either, but whatever the case may be, that he couldn't find the exact equivalent in the Talmud. But most of the teachings, whatever Matthew and others bring in the name of Jesus, they are the teachings that you could find in rabbinical sources as well. By the way, I once wrote an article where I discussed the 7 sins. You know, there's this concept in Christianity about 7 sins. And I'm proving there that this concept is almost exactly equivalent to what it teaches in what we call ethics of fathers, Pirkei Avot. It's a Mishnah that deals with ethics. And I found that it's almost identical, the same 7. One of them is close but not identical, and the other 6 are identical to the ones that Christians consider the 7 sins. So again, an example where there is a common tradition, and at least the recorded source, our recorded source is older than the Christian recorded sources for this idea. I mean, the original idea of 7 sins actually is in the Mishlei, in the book of Proverbs, but that doesn't say the same 7 sins. But the ones that Christianity counts, we have almost equivalent of that in Ethics of Fathers. So this is just an example. There are certainly a lot of common traditions. Now, the later Christianity, which of course was already a new religion for non-Jews, and which was already from the times of Paul and on, that Christianity is quite different. And there of course, the differences are fundamental. But I'm talking about the original, the Christianity in the times when it was founded. Whatever the Gospels say in the name of the founder of Christianity, those things are not really anything so original that we would gain much, even if we would be learning these types of teachings, whatever whatever he preached. We had very, very similar teachings, as I said. So while Christianity had a lot of positive accomplishments in terms of turning the idolatrous world to a better and more moral system. In terms of what Jews could gain from it, he wasn't, so he died, but there are a lot of other Jewish rabbis who died horrible deaths, and sometimes even worse, with tortures of any kind. So exactly what would make the Jews interested in that religion? At some point it was just a Jewish sect with the difference between the early Christians and the Jews was that they believed that Mashiach already came, and the rest of the Jews thought that he didn't come yet. But later on, it developed into a completely new religion with ideas of Trinity, all kinds of other things. Who knows exactly when these ideas were imported. By the way, Sir Isaac Newton did not believe in Trinity. That's another interesting thing, that there are some Christians who don't believe in Trinity. It's a very, very small percentage of Christians that don't. But there is a possibility, even within Christianity, of people re-examining some of their fundamental beliefs and understanding that there is no possibility for any division within God, and that's clear. It's clear in the Bible, and not only in our Torah. Newton was apparently. I'm not an expert, of course, in Newton's writings, especially on this topic. Maybe more on his scientific writings, but it seems that he was trying to base himself on manuscripts, and he figured that even in the New Testament there is no real proof for this. fundamental idea of Christianity. So coming back, again, this video kind of came out on many different topics. I just wanted to say that my proposal is let's forget about the possible bad and try to look at the good. Yeah, there were and there are some Jews in certain circumstances that may be behaving not properly towards non-Jews. There are a lot more cases, I'm sure, of the opposite. Which world do we want to live in? Do we want the future to be when everybody hates each other? Or do we want a future where we are willing to coexist and agree to disagree on certain issues of religion? So I propose, and vast majority of Jews would want that everybody will go according to their beliefs, sincere beliefs of their religion, without trying to hate anybody who does not agree with them, and trying to live in the world where we'll hope will be peace and understanding. This is the ideas that America was founded on. Unfortunately, today some of this is breaking apart. But America was founded originally on this kind of idea, and we will hope that this is the future we'll have, rather than the future of intolerance and hatred.